Welcome to City on a Hill Kids Church Online.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Jimmy.
Today we're looking at 1 Peter 4:10.
But that will be after a time of worship.
Whatever gift you have received, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others, to serve others. I want to serve you with the gifts you've given me. Oh yeah, I want the world to see that I've got Jesus in me. Jesus in Each of you should use whatever gift you have received. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others, to serve others. I want to serve you with the gifts you've given me. Oh yeah, I want the world to see that I've got Jesus in me. I want to serve you with the gifts you've given me. Oh yeah, I want the world to see that I've got Jesus in me. Jesus in me. I want to serve you with the gifts you've given me. Oh yeah, I want the world to see that I've got Jesus in me.
This is the last in the series on identity, and we are taking today's verse from 1 Peter 4 verse 10, and it says, as each of us have received a gift, minister it to one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. 1 Peter 4:10. We are God's workmanship, fearfully and wonderfully made, to shine for Him. He has chosen us, He has blessed us, and given us gifts and abilities. Now, these are to be appreciated, they're to be taken care of, and they are to be shared. These gifts and abilities are to be put to good use and have a good impact in the places that we go, the places that we are, such as our families, our neighborhood, the church, our schools, the clubs that we go to, anywhere and everywhere. Now, I'm going to tell you a story that's in the Bible, and I want you to see if you can pick out some of the gifts and abilities that God has given the named characters in this story. The story comes from 1 Samuel chapter 25. Now there was a man named Nabal. He lived in one place, but his place of business was in another. His place of business was in Carmel. He was very rich. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. And you know, when you have sheep, you do need to shear them at some point. Can you imagine shearing the wool off 3,000 sheep? That's a lot of sheep. And that's a lot of wool. Well, as I said, he was very rich. And he traveled to Carmel for the shearing of his sheep. Nabal had a wife whose name was Abigail. She, because her husband was rich, was rich. She was also very wise, very intelligent, and she gave good advice. And moreover, she was beautiful. And then there was David. Remember David? He that would be king. So, as I said, Nabal had traveled to Carmel for the shearing of his sheep. And after that, after the sheep had been shorn, there would normally be a big party. And David sent 10 of his men to Carmel to meet Nabal and give him a greeting from him. So the greeting and the message came from David. And the greeting was with all sorts of good things, like, oh, that Nabal will live long and that he will do well, and things like that. After this, David had asked his 10 men to say to Nabal that, look, your shepherds, as long as they were with us in Carmel, that not one of them came to harm, and not even one single sheep got missing. And if he didn't believe him, that he should ask his shepherds. Now, since the men were there on a feast day, give them whatever you feel would be good, so as to bring back, so that it can be shared amongst the men. Can you imagine, or can you guess what Nabal's response was? Oh, by the way, Nabal means fool. It means folly. This is how Nabal responded. Who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? Many servants are running away from their masters now. Am I to give my bread and my water and the meat that I have killed for my sharers to men that I don't know? He was horrid. He was so rude. Anyway, the 10 men went back to David and reported to him exactly what Nabal had said. David was angry. He was seething. And then he now decided that he was going to make war on Nabal, his household, and all his men. So he gathered 400 of his men with their swords and started to march towards Carmel. But there was a man who went and told Abigail, Nabal's wife, about what Nabal had said and done. And he confirmed that it was actually true, that while the shepherds were with David and his men, not one shepherd was hurt and not one sheep got missing. So Abigail quickly packed 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep already cleaned, 5 seers of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 fig cakes. She packed this onto donkeys and sent them off ahead of her. This was a feast fit for a king. As I said, she set them off ahead of her, but she hadn't told her husband what she had done by this time. She rode after them and reached David as he and his 400 men were going towards Carmel. She got off her donkey and presented the gifts to David and advised him against taking revenge on Nabal for his bad and foolish behavior. Good a thing that David listened. He took her advice and said thank you very much for the presents and thank you for the advice. Abigail went home and she still didn't tell her husband what she had done because he was drunk. By the following morning, he was now sober and she now told him exactly what had happened. Nabal froze. You can get the rest of the story if you read 1 Samuel chapter 25. Now, in this story, can you pick out the gifts that the named people had? Let's start with Nabal. Nabal, he was very rich. And Abigail, because she was Nabal's wife, was rich. She was wise, she was intelligent, she gave good advice, she was beautiful. Then David had lots of men who were loyal to him. He was a kind person and fair, and he listened to reason. Now, who do you think did not use the gift that God had given them wisely? Yes, it was Nabal. He was foolish, arrogant, and selfish. Everybody else in the story used their gifts wisely. We all have gifts. Let us use the gifts that God has given to us wisely. Now let's say the verse again. As each one has received a gift, minister it to one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. 1 Peter 4:10. Shall we say it one more time? As each one has received a gift, minister it to one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. 1 Peter 4:10. And that's the end of the story.
Hello, how are you doing? Look, I have been making these little baubles. They're like a bit like a bauble you'd hang on a Christmas tree, but instead they say my gift to the world, and then I've written crafts. This one I've written baking, and on one side there's a picture of the globe and the other side something to represent the gift. And I thought these are nice to make because it's good to celebrate the gifts that God has given us. That's a way of giving thanks to God for what he's done, but also to remind ourselves these gifts aren't just for us, they're to bless other people. So I bet you've got loads of gifts, maybe encouraging people, maybe you're good with computers, that can be a huge blessing to other people. Maybe you're good at fashion, helping people to look good. Maybe you're good at playing music and blessing people that way. So let's make one of these. First of all, you need a piece of white card and something to draw a circle. So I'm using the inside of this sellotape. And draw your circle and then just freehand draw on a sort of box at the top like that. And we'll get this cut out. While we're doing that, you can be thinking, oh, what gift am I going to do? And how could I draw something to represent it? Some gifts are easier to draw than others, aren't they? So, there we are. Cut that out. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a hole punch and punch as near as I can to the middle of this top section. That actually came out quite well, but sometimes I find it's hard to judge exactly where a hole punch will come out. So that's why we just do the box, we'll do the hole punch, and then around it, around the hole, we can draw in the shape we actually want, which is a sort of curved, I don't know, dome bit for the top of our bauble. So that's that ready. Next, we're going to cut out the label. So it depends on the size of your bauble, really, but I think a rectangle about 7 centimeters by 4 centimeters is a good size. So I'll just measure that off and get that cut out. And we'll punch a hole in that as well. And we'll be able to tie those two together. So on the rectangle, you're going to write my gift to the world is, and this time I think I'll write teaching, because that's another thing I'm quite good at. Teaching, and I can use that to help other people. So God's given me a gift, and I can use it to help others. So now I'm going to take my bauble, and on one side, I'm going to draw a picture of the world like this. And you can either have a look at a globe and try and get all the continents and countries in the right places, or you can just kind of vaguely do some islands, something like this. And then what we'll do is we'll colour the islands in green. I'll just do it quite quickly and roughly for just now. And then round about we colour in the sea blue, and that's a very recognisable as the world. It's kind of what the world looks like from space, if you've seen pictures of that. Don't expect any of us have ever actually been into space to see it. So there we are, there are my continents, and then I'll colour the sea in blue. And I need to think, what am I going to draw on the back to represent teaching? Tricky one. And it might be that what you want to do is make several of these, because you'll have lots of different gifts, or you could write all of your gifts in one and draw them all on the back. I think on the back of this one, I'm just going to do a question mark, because often teaching is to do with answering people's questions or helping people to understand things that they didn't know. So there we are, a big question mark. And then all I need to do is get a piece of wool, which I have here, and I'm going to thread it through this hole, and I'm going to thread it through this hole. There we are. And tie those together and put a bow. And here we have a little decoration all ready, partly to remind me to thank God that He's given me a gift, but also to remind me that I can use that gift to bless other people. So this week, why don't you think about what gifts God's given you and remember to use them to bless everybody round about you. Well, I hope you enjoyed making some of these. They're very quick, but they're good fun. You could make them for other people as well, to remind them what gifts they have and the things that you appreciate about them, but to remind them that they can use it to bless the world too. And I'll see you again next week. Bye for now.
God has given each of us gifts, abilities, and talents. Even though that's so, I think it's our responsibility to develop those gifts so that we can be the best we can be.
That's right, Jamie. That ties in with appreciating the talents and gifts God has given us, and not keeping them to ourselves, but sharing them with others.
That's true. And no one is too little or too big to share their gifts with others.
Nor should you be too arrogant or selfish with the gift God has given you.
Just like Nabal in the story, he was selfish, arrogant, and foolish. He didn't even seem to want to know whether what David's 10 men were saying were true. Nor did he even want to ask his shepherds whether what they were saying was true either.
I know, right? But even if he did find out if they were telling the truth, he was so rude, selfish, and ungrateful with the way he responded.
I wonder how the rest of the story goes.
You know, you could read 1 Samuel 25 to get the rest of the story.
You know what? I'm going to do just that. And on top of that, I'm going to say a prayer to God, thanking him for the abilities and talents that he's given me.
That's a good idea. Also, we should ask God to help us appreciate, look after, and share with others the gifts he has given us. You try doing this too. Let's say the verse.
As each one of us has received a gift, minister it to one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. 1 Peter 4:10.
That's it for this week.
Till next time, bye!